Now, for what could possibly be an hour-long rant on anti-senescence technology and whether or not it will ever be adopted by the human race. So you see, let's underline our basic premise here. If you have nanotechnology, which is a thing now, it would just require significant application of artificial intelligence in order to make it smart enough to codify, modify, and fabricate human cells on the fly while embedded in our central nervous and immune systems. Okay, so once we've established that that is a possibility, which I fully believe that it is, it'll start small, right? Implants, cortical implants, subcutaneous, what have you. However, what you'll find after this, as the idea becomes more widespread, the medical community is using, somebody's going to figure out a way to use it for entertainment or some other form of ubiquity. Think about televisions in the 1950s. Oh, you've got a TV? Yeah, okay. 30 years later, you don't have a TV? This is how technology works. It's actually how almost all major events in human history work. There becomes a tipping point where a new idea is introduced, and over time, there's a lot of naysayers and people who watch and wait, right? Late adopters, and then there's typically it's younger people. Um, Early adopters, oh, let's check this new thing out. Everything's new and exciting. Gotta check it out. If you think the world's not going to change, it's because you forgot that you were a child. Think about that. Okay, so my hypothesis is thus. At a certain point, if the technology is available, it's going to start being used for anti-senescence. What is that? Well, it's basically, if you look through recorded history, everyone's dream, right? It's one of the most written about things in history, which is the Fountain of Youth. Anti-senescence is one way to accomplish this. And that's just the term I'm using. I ripped it off from a Stephen Baxter novel, but it's fantastic. He's really good. It's hard science fiction. If you're actually into thinking about what might be in futurism, check him out. Anyways, so if you can commoditize or make some kind of income from it, anything becomes a thing, right? Things get bigger once the corporations gets involved. That's why the world has changed so much so quickly since the Industrial Revolution. We talk about the Renaissance and lots of cool things happened, and the late Middle Ages or Dark Ages, whatever one you want to call it, during the later parts of the medieval period. There was innovations, yes. And if you look at the monastic records, and things from like the Byzantine or the Holy Roman Empire, you'll see that there was, and also there's a long and studious Muslim tradition. But from those time periods, it's kind of stagnant in the Western world. Once the Industrial Revolution began, after the ubiquity of forged iron and articulate mechanical things that would do work. That was the thing. Prior to that, people had to do work for something to happen. All of a sudden, you can mechanize something. People can go farther when you get mechanized vehicles. People can work on more sophisticated tasks when you have mechanized machinery that is able to be supervised. Because we're not talking about robotics here. We're talking about, okay, this machine presses, and we know it does that pneumatically, or, well, actually, that's a rabbit hole. There's a lot of different ways that we've skinned that cat to make a machine do this with limited input. Electricity's kind of spoiled us, a lot of the common people, because we don't get to experience the joys of pneumatic and hydraulic and other fluid-based systems and just ways that shit works. But I aim to show off some of those at some point. We'll get to there. So anyway, back to anti-senescence. So what you essentially would be doing is your cells, obviously, when they divide, there is mutations. These are sometimes just random, like luck of the die. Okay, ooh, this wasn't in the right spot. There's a direct correlation to overall health and the level, or I guess the onset time of genetic issues from just cell division. Especially, it gets down into like the deep deep into the cell, like on the mitochondrial level. If you're not putting good, fuel into your body, then obviously, cells are just scavenging for whatever, and maybe they make a mistake because they're hungry. Guess what? Your cells are you. You are your cells, so they're fucking hungry. Anyways, if you can automate that process through a very intelligent little device that maybe the individual nanites aren't very smart, right? But if there's trillions of them, and we obviously already have what mesh networks and cloud computing and linked consciousness that is mechanical. However, I honestly believe that at some point there will be a machine learning that passes a threshold, right? And maybe it isn't true sentience, but it's a stirring or ghost in the machine, as it's well documented. Maybe they're aberrations, maybe there's something there. Until we know more about the actual nature of human consciousness, we can only make best guesses. And because they're designed by humans, one could say that there is a shared genesis, but perhaps not. Perhaps because it's an artifice and we're not at that stage. But I truly believe that if we can conceive of something, then it has some part of us in it. That's why your granddad's tools are nicer than yours ever will be, right? It's intangible. I'm a man of science. Still think there could be something there. Who's to prove me wrong, right? One of the sciences I am a man of is anthropology. Some people like psychology and sociology. I think they're not a waste of time, but evolutionary biology and anthropology are far more interesting, because I would rather understand the true why with historical and cultural precedent to a behavior. And once you start to look at things that way, it kind of changes the conversation, you see. And so you now are looking at, oh, so they believed in magic because they would do this, right? And blah, blah, blah. And now we know about the placebo effect. So we also know that there's, I don't have a good source for it. I heard it on, I think, Radiolab. But there is a woman who was diagnosed with cancer, but her country where she lived in, the doctors wouldn't tell her. Because they were worried that it would actually make it worse. So they told her family. Well, her family didn't want to tell her either, because they were worried it would make it worse. She did not receive any treatment beyond just some breathing treatments, and she went into remission. In fact, the cancer went away. Is there something there, or is this a freak or an aberration? We don't know. That's why it's just a cool story. But it's a cool story. And there's so much in the universe that we don't understand, and there's so much in the human body we don't understand. So who's to say? Which all goes back to if these nanites, it did exist, right? who's to say at a certain point that you're still you, right? If you're being rewritten by an external, system. The best way I can describe it is, think about the Bible, right? It was written by one dude, maybe 100 dudes, translated by thousands. Have you ever passed a message to somebody? Seen what came back? That isn't to say I don't believe any of it. No, not at all. I believe there is useful information. I do believe in things greater than myself. I just don't care to define them. But anything that passes through the human lexicon changes. So, would we be a palimpsest then? I think we already are. It's just we're the ones rewriting. What do you think? Let me know.